Hello and welcome to a special podcast that is about pavements that make us laugh. It's called Comedy Slab. Okay, I've just proven the point. I'm not a comedian, but we dissect the output of comedians. I'm Adrian Lacey. I'm in deepest Kent, and he, of the laughter, is Shane O'Connor, where I think of as up north, but actually you claim it's somewhere in the Midlands.
I am in deepest trouble.
Constantly, I would think, knowing you as I do. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Not bad at all today. It's been a glorious day as well for those of you who are listening to this podcast sometime in the future. You'll be thinking, I wonder what that day was. Was it unusually glorious, or was it just normally glorious and they were just commenting on its gloriousness? Well, there's no way of you finding out, so don't let it just stew and bother you. That's what I would say.
Well, since this will be date stamped, it was unusually glorious. Great was the gloriosity thereof for the end of September.
Can I just say, glorious as a word to use to describe the weather, is that something that you kind of not aspire to, but kind of work up to in the same way that, was it Victoria Wood used to say, when you get to a certain age, you walk past the window and you see shoal sandals in the window and you go, oh, they look comfy. And that certain age, you think, I'm going to start describing the weather as glorious from tomorrow.
I think it does immediately age us, so we probably shouldn't dwell on it for too long.
But it was a glorious day.
It was indeed, and let's hope it's a glorious evening or whatever time of day it is, where and when you're listening, dear listener. But I digress. We do an awful lot of digressions. But essentially, if you haven't listened before, a very special welcome to you. Lovely to have you along. What is the Comedy Slab? Well, we put a piece of comedy, be it TV, radio, podcast, digital, whatever, on the slab for us to dissect over the next little while and see who salutes. We take it in turns to set the other person homework. It was my turn last week to set the homework for the past week, and so we are now going to review that which I set. So I guess what
is that?
That makes me sound old as well.
I've got to write that down. It's now time to review that which I set.
Well, I said we, but yes.
Okay. Just wanted to prove I was listening. That was all that was.
Yeah, well, that makes a change in itself. That is remarkable, borderline glorious. Anyway.
Tell everybody then. What did you? It was a glorious day. What did you set? Pray tell.
Well, it's a radio show. I mean, you and I met in the land of radio. We love radio. We love comedy. So put the two together, can't really go too far wrong. Hopefully, it's Rob Newman's Total Eclipse of Descartes. And clever. When I announced that last week, yes, you chortled. And I think it is a clever title because it's got a lovely little pop pun there. And for people who don't use the word glorious, i.e. you're a bit younger than us, there was a song back in the dark ages. I can't remember what year. But anyway, Total Eclipse of the Heart, Bonnie Tyler, no less. That would have been the 80s, wouldn't it?
88, I would say. Sure.
18.
Have you got a minute? Do you want to?
Well, I'll keep talking. Yeah, I'll keep flanneling. So essentially, that's the show we're going to review. And don't worry if you haven't heard it before, because you can, certainly in the UK, there's no problem hearing it as we speak, via the BBC iPlayer radio app or streaming. I can just see, I'm looking at your picture on Skype, and there is a reason, dear listener, why we don't put Shane's visage or fizzog up, and we are just an audio podcast. Was that a shock as to how old that single is, or you've had some other shock?
I said 88. Did you? You didn't have a guess, did you?
I didn't. No, I didn't. But wait, you've given me a clue in your shocked expression. It's going to be. It's going to be. It could even be 83, 84, 83. I'll go for 83.
83. Bang on the button.
Not half there, mate.
Written by.
Presumably not her. Then I don't know that she's. I don't think of her as a songwriter.
I try not to think of her at all.
Oh come on, that's unbecoming.
Nothing against Bonnie, but I saw her once at the NEC as part of another variety act, Jasper Carrot thing he was putting on. Remember those Rock with Laughter things he used to do?
Not really, no.
Yeah, he used to do these big stadium things, and he'd have comedians and rock bands. Bev Bevan was involved in it and all that sort of stuff. And he had Bonnie Tyler, and she just looked down at the floor all the while she was singing.
Is that where her lyrics were written?
It was off-putting, really off-putting. But anyway, yes.
Well, maybe she found you off-putting, so she didn't want to look up.
Well, I was looking up at her.
Well, exactly.
She was looking at the floor.
To me, to you, is looking at you.
Then I was looking at the floor, yeah.
Can I have a clue? I assume I'm going to know the... You've ruined it. You've just gone and ruined it.
Why?
Well, you didn't give me time to...
No, that was the clue. The clue's Meatloaf. That isn't the answer.
Well, so it wasn't written by Meatloaf?
No. But it was written by...
someone who writes for Meatloaf.
Oh.
There's not a... No, see, I saw a guy with a fish T-shirt the other day, and I don't mean some fish market stall holder. Fish being the front man of Marillion, who I bracket together in my head with Meatloaf. Oh, I don't know.
Jim Steinman.
Oh, of course.
Jim Steinman, who of course...
Was it written for Meatloaf, do you think, originally? He did it first?
Well, I don't know. I think they had a weird relationship, didn't they, Steinman and Meatloaf? I think Jim Steinman was a bit cowed by Meatloaf. I think he found him a bit overwhelming. So I think if he'd have wanted it, he'd have had it, mate, sort of thing.
That proves it's beef, then, if you're cowed by Meatloaf.
By Meatloaf, yeah.
Bum.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
What were we talking about? Yeah, it's interesting. Look, this says everything, doesn't it? Us superannuated disc jockeys talking about the Bonnie Tyler end of the title and not talking about Descartes and philosophy, which is more than half of what Rob Newman's show on Radio 4 is about. So anyway,
that's all we got time for this.
Yeah, that just about wraps it up. Just about wraps us up as serious thinking people, if ever that was in prospect. But anyway, so I've just given you the options. You weren't listening at the time. You were online surfing for the Bonnie Tyler facts. But essentially, yes, go to the BBC iPlayer radio app. And as we speak, I think there's it must be 3-4 weeks to run from where we are now. But it could go beyond that. Some shows have an extended run. Then some shows are brought back on BBC Radio, and then they get another month on iPlayer. But here's the thing.
Can I just say, they're ruining it. They're ruining it with this. Get the rights sorted out, because not just the BBC, all of them, you're ruining it with this. If you're going to have a repository for... I don't know why I thought it was a suppository then. If you're going to have a repository...
I was thinking of... wasn't that something to do with JFK's assassination? He was in the book repository.
The book repository, yeah. My dad always used to say, he said, those suppositories, for all the good they were, I might as well have stuck them up me. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think Paul Merton's done that joke. But
if you're going to have a repository, you got to have it. It's got to be accessible. There's no point having 2 episodes available and the rest. It's rubbish. I think the state of online digital archives at the moment is pretty poor.
Well, I'm not just saying this because I work for the BBC and would like to carry on doing so. There is a complication. A mate of mine who's also a writer was likewise saying, it should be like Netflix. It should be up in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And then I thought, and it's only afterwards, because I only have these smart thoughts days later when it's just too late to raise it. But I thought, okay, so how would he feel if his shows, and he has written for BBC Radio, amongst other fine outlets. How would he feel if he didn't get paid any extra for them being up in perpetuity? Because that's the problem, though, isn't it? It would cost more money.
Yeah, but the thing like the BBC, instead of spending £1 million recruiting disabled journalists because they feel there's a shortfall of those on their current roster, like they're doing today, spend it on the content, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're not a social service.
Well, journalists are content, and I'm not going down that particular blind alley, but thank you for
journalists aren't
me.
content.
Well, they produce
journalists
content.
Create content.
Yeah. So if you get rid of all journalists, you get
to spend £1 million on journalists that you've got already is, for my book, obscene. But there you go. I think they're better off spending it on there. But yeah, I mean, pay for it. But if you can't pay for it, then don't put it up. That's my view. Is either do one thing or the other.
Okay. I hear what you say.
I'm frustrated, that's all.
Well, it reminds me of one of the early lines in the show that we're going to hear a clip from, because you'll be reassured to know that it's not just us mithering about various gripes in the world of media, although that's part of the show, as we've demonstrated. But no, we do actually play you out 3 clips of the show, which, without further ado, I should say is a hat-trick production. And
that's why we play 3 clips.
Very good. Goal in one.
Should we play one so that people...
Yes, I was just going to say that at the top of the show there is...
just to talk about
You never know. Actually, I think the idea of talking about paving slabs that make us laugh, that could fly too. But anyway, there is a gag early on, is there not? Back me up on this, Shane. There's a gag about so he sets up the show saying it's about 3,000 years of history to try and understand how we got where we are and study philosophy and so on. So the show will last for about half an hour, and then we'll split into groups and. And the joke was there'll be some kind of sort of study breakout groups afterwards, and he's kind of setting himself up in that. Anyway, that's not the clip we're going to hear. The first of 3 clips. He goes through the ages. He's fascinated by history. He's very well read. He studied English literature, I think, so you get loads of literary references. Sadly, I don't always get loads of literary references, but I sort of run to catch up. But here, we're on the history side of things. He's just been talking about the English Civil War. He's previously been talking about the Roundheads, the parliamentarians. Now he's going to talk about the other lots. They are royalists, or they are otherwise known by another name.
What was the philosophy on the other side in the English Civil War? Well, nowadays, the word cavalier is more often than not a pejorative, as in, don't you think that's a bit cavalier? But during the English Civil War, on the royalist side, it was a great compliment. How goes the battle, me lord? Is it today? Oh, very cavalier. How many men do you have, me lord? No idea. Oh, that's very cavalier. Oh, thank you. I started a head count, but it became wearisome after 4 or 5, and I thought, counting, isn't that what grocers do? So let's say somewhere between, 4 and 15. Is that cavalier enough? It's certainly cavalier enough, although it may not be enough cavaliers. Oh, touché. Exquisite bon mot.
You actually, there was another joke before that as well, wasn't there, when he was talking about his daughter and how he was trying to shield her from the news by singing a song.
Now, you are the father of a young band. Did you identify with that, or could you imagine being in that situation?
I mean, although I'm not at that stage yet with him, but I did kind of identify with that kind of, because my son Frank's got like a favourite. When I go doodle 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 doodle, for some reason it cracks him up. He loves it when if you just go do 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 do, but if you go doodle 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 like that, he loves it. But so I did kind of relate to that. And I thought we got off to a great start with this. I thought, oh, great! This. You hinted at the fact that it might be unusual. I think you made
not a load of gags.
Some reference to Sarah Kendall, who we listened to, which wasn't gag laden, was it really? And I thought, I don't know what he's on about. This is, we had that, and we had the clip that we heard, and we had the one about his daughter. And I thought, this is it is going to be gag laden, but you were right, it wasn't, was it, at all?
No, so I thought, because I got told off, Sarah Kendall, if you haven't heard the show, but it is available, our comedy slab dissection of Sarah Kendall, who's an Australian actress and comedian. That was more storytelling, wasn't it? But with laughs. So for me, that still counts as comedy, and this very definitely does. But actually, let's do a quick refresher. He came to fame in that illustrious decade of Bonnie Tyler, did he not? Was it that far? Oh, no, it was 90s, wasn't it? More than 80s. With the Mary Whitehouse experience, which I remember being on Radio 1 as well as the TV. I think, did it start on Radio 1, do we know?
The Mary Whitehouse experience, I thought, was on Radio 4. It's funny how your mind plays tricks, isn't it? Well,
there was a stage where, certainly for part of the 90s, Radio 1 did do comedy.
Yeah. But the Mary Whitehouse experience was like a kind of sketch show of the time, wasn't it, really? It was kind of radio sketch. And then he went to TV, did it?
It did. I worked on one of them. I can't remember.
I don't remember it on TV.
Yeah, in my sound engineering days. Basically, it was 2 pairings, really. It was Newman and Baddiel. David Baddiel was in that? Have I misremembered this? But certainly Punt and Dennis, Steve Punt and Hugh Dennis.
Of course, yes, it was.
With the other pair. Yeah. So it was a sort of ménage à quatre, if you will. Yeah. And Mary Whitehouse, again, for people under 100 years old, she was a quite... is censorious the word? Is that a thing? Anyway, she was into censorship, and she'd complain about heaving bottoms on Dennis Potter shows. So she was trying to keep...
or even heaving potters on Dennis Potter shows as well, didn't she? Was the other thing she had a real hang-up about.
Well, yeah, each of their own. I mean, you do wonder if she protested too much. But I actually went and I saw her speak at one stage, because I have my Christian roots as well. So so in certain segments, the sort of more evangelical end of the church were very pro Mary Whitehouse, and they sort of flew the flag. But it's
You're not getting Doris Stokes and her mixed up, are you?
I think you say Doris Day.
Remember Doris Stokes?
I don't think so. What, the medium?
I don't know what size she was, but yeah. Yeah, she was, wasn't she? Was she?
Who was the piano player? Oh no, that was Mrs. Mills. She was more large than medium. Bless her.
Anyway, back to the real world. Can I just say before we go any further?
Well, I didn't quite finish my. Can I finish my sentence?
Oh, sorry.
Which is just
go on, yeah.
The title and indeed the whole philosophy or ethos of the Mary Whitehouse experience was wholly ironic. It was pushing at those boundaries that she had fought very hard to. Can I use the word erect? She probably wouldn't approve.
Not when she's about your part, no.
Anyway, back to you.
No, and very funny as well, the Mary Whitehouse experience. Can I just say that I'm fully prepared to accept and concede that I'm thick.
I'm not offering any comment
in our review of this, because I've started taking your advice. I told you last week. I watch or I listen once through, get a kind of more gut reaction from it, and then I sit down and I do the analysis and write the notes. And because it's radio, I thought, and I have a laptop.
Don't tell me you were trying to do something else at the same time. It doesn't work on this show.
No, because it was radio, and I'll keep the laptop on the nightstand. I thought, I know, I'll listen to it in bed. And the first time I tried to do that, I fell asleep. about 10 minutes in. Now, right. I think that's not so much of a critique. That's probably just how tired I was at the time.
Yeah.
But then I found it really hard to listen to. Did you get that sense of like, I've really got to concentrate on this now?
Oh, well, because definitely, it was working my grey matter like nothing. And yes, I used my formula, which you've nicked off me, but I've copywritten it. So I did my first listen through. I heard it as I think I was doing some making the bed or something, and vague household chores. And then second time, I sat down with pen and paper, and absolutely it required. Twice I went off to Wikipedia just to have check something that on Rob Newman's page there, or the page that Wiki has on him, and then I missed the next gag, so I stopped doing that. Yeah,
you have to go back. I used the internet to look up a lot of what he was saying because I didn't understand what he was on about. Honestly, a lot of it I thought, oh wow, it really ruined my enjoyment for a start. The fact that I had to work so hard.
Right.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe this is where we're at. Is that, you know, as an audience we're spoon fed a lot of it. But I mean, when people, and I wrote a phrase down. Like anyone, I'm fascinated by the complex dance of hereditary and environment. I mean,
but that was
not
more
a comedy
worded,
line, is it?
That was no. Although you almost want to laugh because it's what
I said. Bum. do you know
lost
what I mean?
Your bum.
It's like, oh man, it was such hard work. Then
he could have helped his audience by saying nurture versus nature, but he probably didn't want to do something that he would see as I don't know. I'm trying to get into his mind as a bit too obvious.
That extraneous noise that just made you jump there. I think that was my shredder going off in the background. I don't know.
Are you shredding the notes you made because you gave up in the end?
I think. Well, yeah, it has. I think it's just come back to life there. Sorry about that.
Perhaps what we're touching on is, and I did one of my very long circumlocutions, if I'm allowed to use a very long word, which is about using two long words, really, going round the bush, beating about the bush. But I was going to say that if people can't get access to iPlayer, hopefully they'll be able to access him live, because he's doing a tour starting next week. But here's the thing. I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
It's all going... Oh, sorry.
When I said silence, I said phones to manual before we started recording. You knew what I meant.
I know, but I'm giving up the Villa to record this tonight, and they've just equalised against Bristol City. That's something you needed to know about.
Can I translate? Giving up the Villa is not some euphemism for some bizarre act. It actually means you're not watching TV and your favourite Aston Villa local-ish team.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously not going to be listening to me now, but just on
No, I am.
On the basis that one or two people might be listening. Yes, this series has been beautifully timed to coincide with the start of his live tour next week, and perhaps we're touching on. Let me know what you feel about this, Shane. Perhaps we're touching on the limits of how easy it is to convert a one-person show into a radio show. I was talking about this only earlier today in a different context, thinking of Sarah Kendall who we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But that I felt, well, it seems you felt that was more successful. But the thing is, if you or I pay 20 quid to go and see, or whatever it is, go and see Rob or Sarah or one of a number of acts live, we're going to sit there and we won't have the dishwasher whirring in the background or your son Frank wanting your attention or whatever. We are there to enjoy the show, and you would absorb yourself in it.
I think you'd want more out of it, though. If you went out and spent money and went out, I think you'd want... The difference between Rob Newman and Sarah Kendall is accessibility, I think. I firmly believe that's the difference between the two. Sarah Kendall is not talking about the Persian god Mithras.
But that is part of what Rob's talking about. But I learnt something there, and I wanted to go and
nothing, though, isn't it? Really, he doesn't really go anywhere with it.
Well, no, it was pertinent to. It was a lovely gag about Jesus, which I've virtually ruined now. I can't do it justice, but
isn't that the point? And this is where I was conflicted with it. Is that. Yeah. Because I kind of felt it was Emperor's New Clothes all the way through. It's like it was clever for the sake of being clever. And reading reviews afterwards, and then what I always do, as I said to you before, is I read the comments of ordinary people at the bottom. I'm not the only one who felt like that. There's a lot of hate on him about his attitude towards science, and a lot of people... I read a Guardian review, and all the Guardian readers who'd commented were pouring scorn and hatred on him for how dare he talk about science like this. He hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. The bloke's an idiot. And all, like really, vitriolic stuff.
But I'm guessing these weren't necessarily all scientists who were being vitriolic.
Well, I'm guessing not as well. I mean, but I mean, it was like quite disproportionate, really. I thought, but the whole it was conflicted because on the one hand, it's very, very artsy, clever. I've got to look this up to figure out what the hell he's talking about. And then the next thing, he's doing gags like all UN resolutions are going to be in the voice of Eric Morecambe or Tommy Cooper.
Which actually he did quite well, I thought, the impersonation there. But I exactly
that didn't
loved
fit
that,
in
though.
his... Do you know what I mean?
I loved it, how he brought it back down to earth in that way. I obviously didn't do it for you, but it's... the posh term is bathos. It took me years to work out the difference between that and pathos. But you're going from the dizzying high to the real low, from high culture to pop culture. I really like that because to me that was him puncturing his own intelligence. There's obviously no shortage of intelligence. I don't think he was. It didn't feel to me like he was ramming his intelligence down my throat for the sake of it. There are people who do that, but I didn't feel he was doing that. I felt he was enjoying it, and it's very Radio 4 in that sense. It's not an easy listen, despite being. I mean, comedy doesn't have to be, does it? I think it's probably time for another clip, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say we're playing another clip, but the note I made about the clip that we heard, the Cavalier and Roundhead's clip, I actually rewound that and went back to that, and I don't think the audience were enjoying it either, because there were very few either laughs or even kind of, the sound of acknowledgement of they get it, they're with him.
Right.
I thought it was fascinating that, because you can't, because immediately you think, oh, is it me? Am I being a bit dim here, where I'm not really on the same kind of wavelength? But I like my comedy funny.
Well, our listener, or one of them, will decide if they find the next clip funny, because again, it's bathos. It takes it up to an intellectual pitch, and then gudung. Anyway, so this is clip number 2, and handily for what you and I have what you've just been raising, Shane. He's talking about science,
science, yeah,
and specifically about how many scientific discoveries have come about by accident.
Wilhelm Röntgen discovers diagnostic radiology by accidentally X-raying his hand. Or how in 1967 Jocelyn Bell, told to monitor quasars, discovers pulsars instead. Or look at the serendipity by which Konrad Lorenz discovered imprinting in geese and ducks. In 1930s Austria, Konrad Lorenz stumbled upon the discovery that geese are born not with an instinct to fly or swim, but with an instinct to mimic the first living being they see, usually, of course, Mother Goose. The goslings follow her, and everything she does is imprinted on them and becomes their behaviour too. But if Mother Goose isn't there when they hatch, goslings will imprint on the first living thing they see. In this case, Konrad Lorenz, who one day found himself tailed by orphan goslings. As he made his morning coffee, he looked behind him to find goslings in single file, following his footsteps from cupboard to sink to stove to veranda. For want of Mother Goose, Konrad Lorenz himself had to walk down to the river, wade in and splash about before the orphan goslings understood what to do. The discovery of imprinting in geese and ducks made Konrad Lorenz a global science superstar. But then it emerged that in Austria, in the 1930s and 40s, Konrad Lorenz had been an enthusiastic Nazi. The truth might never have been discovered, but one night his geese were seen holding a torchlit parade, while the ducks were observed goose-stepping.
And again, I'm being rotten here, but I could see that coming a mile off the gag. I could just see it. And that
hang on, doesn't that undermine your own argument that makes it accessible, doesn't it? If you can see it coming.
But that's not what you want, is it? You don't want ghosts that you go, oh yeah, I could see that. I'd see where that was going or where that was coming from. And so it was like it was a roller coaster disappointment. Do you know what I mean? It was like the highs I didn't get, I didn't understand, went over my head, and then the lows I kind of thought, oh, is this?
They went under you.
It's obvious, yeah.
Can I just ask this little test about how much? How perhaps widely known this is. Did you recognise any of the scientific discoveries, like the X-ray of the hand? You'd heard that before, had you?
I'd heard that one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite well known.
That is.
So it's not so highfalutin. I didn't know about this guy in 1930s Austria. I assume most of that, barring the punchline, is true, but I didn't know about that, and I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah. But again, I kind of. I don't know whether is that enough?
Sounds like not enough for you, perhaps.
Do you know? I really found, and I put in my notes, I haven't concentrated this hard since I was at school, and that's how I felt. You know, like when you're really trying to grasp something, when you were trying to grasp something as a kid at school, and you were maybe it's just me again, but like you're really focusing on every single syllable of every single word to try and absorb, and that's how I felt. And I kind of, if I'd have seen it live and I'd have paid money for it,
Yeah.
And this is no disrespect to Rob or his comedy, but I'd have kind of thought if I'd worked that hard, I'd want to be on the payroll.
Yeah, or at least get a discount off your ticket price.
Yeah, or at least can I just have shares?
Yeah. Well, can I just say, whatever you are saying about this show, I didn't quite finish the biography. So I've confirmed through the miracle of Mr. or Ms. Wiki, it was indeed, of course, David Baddiel, who was paired with Rob Newman, or Robert Newman, as he calls himself at the top of the show.
Yeah.
Make of that what you will. This is an aside. David Baddiel, I saw in his Footlights days, and bless him, my dad took me along to see him. Every now and again, Dad would. It's the only time I remember going with Dad. Maybe he'd gone with my sister, who was 3 years older, on previous occasions. But my dad was sort of loved comedy enough to seek out the Footlights shows. That's where you're seeing tomorrow's stars today. And Baddiel did shine. I mean, if there's one person I remember from that show, it was him. Anyway, but then we have different phases of Rob Newman, like a fine wine, or whatever image you want to use, Shane. Might not be that, but he then. Well, I'm not quite sure of the order of events necessarily, because he ducks out of the limelight. I mean, he was the one, did you gather from Mary Whitehouse's experience, out of the four of the guys, he was the heartthrob. All the girls wanted to get the attention of, shall we say?
Yeah, no, I would get, because I remember I looked at his website, and he's quite a dashing chap, isn't he? And he wears hasn't he got like a tweed suit and glasses on, and you kind of...
Well, he looks like a professor these days, but in those days he had a great mop, didn't he? A sort of virtually covering his eyes, this great long fringe.
Was it the Mary Whitehouse experience where the two of them used to do History Today?
That's you, that is.
That's you.
Yeah, very different.
Do you know the old tramp in the park? That's your mother, that is.
Or that's certainly
her
him.
Boyfriend.
Sorry, I didn't mean to tread on the laugh. But that was paired with David Baddiel. I'm not sure. I think that started in Mary Whitehouse and then came out, and didn't they take that
Newman
themselves
and Baddiel,
out of the show?
Didn't they?
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
But then I saw him. If you think this show isn't full of gags, I saw him, albeit in a theatre situation. It wasn't actually in the theatre space proper with the stage and everything. It was in a kind of room off the theatre. This is the Soho Theatre. Mate of mine's kept sort of across his career, and in fact ended up sort of being chums. They keep bumping into each other in the cafe where I think Rob was writing. So, it sounded very approachable. But there was much more like a lecture. If you think this is dense without gags, this was... I mean, he's a man on a mission, I think. And I think he found the heartthrob thing. I think he found a distraction. That's what I hear from people in the biz. It sounds ungrateful to me, if only they were queuing around the block for me, but they ain't. And anyway, so I have to provide my own distractions.
But
I don't need your sympathy.
The block, are they?
No, exactly. They're queuing to leave me. But enough about my marital woes. Where does that leave us vis-a-vis clip 3? Should we go into that?
Yeah, let's have a listen. Can I just say, actually, just something you said about you're not sure how I felt about him or whatever. The really odd thing is that I came away from this not pouring hate on Robert Newman, but thinking... I felt disappointed because I just thought, well, it wasn't the vehicle that connected with me. Yeah. I'd really like to see him in other stuff. Maybe I'm not. From what I'd read about comments of people who I assume knew his act, there was this kind of feeling, or there's this sort of subplot that people were suggesting that he's kind of got an agenda.
Well, he's left of centre, and he's very pro-liberal, small L liberal.
No, I mean like an anti-science agenda. People kept on talking about he got this kind of and why what had happened, why was he like this, and you see, I just viewed it that he'd chosen that as a subject, the science and the philosophy and how it impacts on modern day life as just a vehicle. Whereas there was a suggestion from a lot of people were suggesting in comments that I saw that, oh no, this is his hobby horse. This is something that so I'd like to see him to do something different. But I didn't come away thinking, oh, what a rotter. He's wasted half an hour of my life. I kind of felt a bit sad that I didn't connect with it in that way.
Right.
So no, I didn't. It wasn't a personal thing to him, and thought, well, it was him, and it was rubbish, or he's rubbish. So I just wanted to.
Okay, no, I've got that.
In case his mum's listening.
I should send the boys round. But you might. I think you undersell your own intellect, because you're clearly a bright spark. Just because we haven't been in the lessons where these things have been discussed doesn't make us thick, does it? It just means, he knows some stuff we don't, doubtless.
I was too thick to find the room where they were being discussed, so that does make me thick.
Well, I can only bail you out so much, Shane.
I know.
Shall I set this up? Well, this one's a bit complicated. If you thought the other two were. Because
I'm there by this point. I'm going, for flipping X's sake. What are we doing?
I can see
here?
why you fell asleep if you'd had a taxing day. It's not wind-down comedy. It's wind-up comedy, it would seem. Anyway, did you know this? Because just to get everyone up to speed. But Shane, did you know about the building blocks of life? They're 4 different... Are they called words? It's the proteins, isn't it, in the DNA? The double helix, anyway. Of it.
Yeah, all I could hear at this point was like this whooshing sound as it all went over my head. I'm thinking, I like to take more than a passing interest in science, and biology and and whatever. But I hadn't got the first clue what he was on about.
Okay, well, you've heard of mapping the genome, or words to that effect, where I think that was finished some years ago, wasn't it? The human genome.
Was it David Bowie? That was Gene Genie, wasn't it?
No, ha ha ha, he, I'm the laughing genome. Oh, God, that's a bit obscure, even for Bowie fans. Bowie fans, sorry, I can't even pronounce his name correctly. Anyway, but if you were to reduce it to the simplest thing, there are only 4 elements. It's like, we've only got 26 letters of the alphabet. There are only 4... Stop it. You sound
there are
like
only 4 elephants, did you say? That's not right.
See, I think the fault lies with you and your concentration level.
They must be moving around quickly.
I was going to say
I saw about 6 on safari when I went to South Africa.
I was going to say you've got ADHD, but that's 4 letters, but they're not all different ones. But anyway,
you see, I was brought up listening to old goons where they say like it's irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. It's an hippopotamus. Oh.
See, that's the kind of gag you want, isn't it? Well, why don't you write for Rob Newman?
I'll just nick stuff.
Anyway, I'll finish this sentence if it kills me, because otherwise we can't hear this clip. No, 4 elements to the constantly repeating patterns within the DNA. This is how you became you, heaven help us, and I became me, and whoever's listening became themselves. Yeah. Anyway. So just imagine they're given letters for short, and what he's done is said, okay, so there's 4 letters. Stop it! You're about to corpse again. Stop it. Look, if there's one thing you shouldn't do in comedy is make you laugh at your own jokes. That's the first rule. Get it out.
I just honestly by this, if you could have seen my face at this point.
I thought you'd like it there as a musician. I'm trying to build an intro into this music, because this episode, I should have said much earlier, is called The Music of the Chromosomes, which is a reference to the music of the spheres. Now, I would have to go away and look that up, but he did remind us something to do with Pythagoras and the planets, right? Okay. But the music of the chromosomes, he's taken these 4 letters, which are in every cell of your body and every cell of mine and everyone listening. So we have that in common. We also have it in common with lettuce, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure I've done that gag earlier in this series. But anyway, so he's taken them and he's translated them to the ukulele, which is a small guitar. I know you know that, but just in case anyone doesn't. And it has 4 strings. So for me, that's a really creative idea. But yes, it does need full concentration. And without further ado, I must let him get on with turning our chromosomes into music.
I think I will have more luck with the music of the chromosomes, which also began with a small discovery. The 4 base pairs of DNA, GCTA. The 4 strings of the ukulele, GCEA. Play thynine on the E string, and you have guanine, cytosine, thymine, adenine, GCTA. This being so, I went through the genome of a chimpanzee. Now, on the page, the genome is just permutations of GCTA, and it's hard to decipher a pattern. But when played aloud, patterns start to emerge. And on the hemoglobin gene of a chimpanzee, I found this. So I thought, well, let me look at the same section of hemoglobin gene of an orangutan. And I found this. A rather pleasing counterpoint. And you can tell it's a Sumatran orangutan because it sounds a little bit like gamelan.
So, Mr. Shane, do I need to explain what a gamelan is, or do you happen to know? It's an instrument from Southeast Asia. You should go along to the Royal Festival Hall. There's a lunchtime gamelan. Tim, you won't like it. You won't like it. They won't be your people.
Let me book me train ticket now.
Well, the good news is the river's nearby if you want to throw yourself in.
All right, I'm Shane. I'm here for the gamelan.
I'm from the Midlands. I'm thick boy. Anyway, I gave a bad intro into that. I'm not going to do the whole thing again because it took about half an hour. I actually said our genes. I should have said it's other other animals he's putting through the process. Anyway,
and also, shouldn't you have mentioned that he was a lazy Cypriot as well?
A lazy Cypriot.
Wasn't he saying his dad's Greek?
Yes, but I don't want to ruin the gag. We've actually come out before the punchline of the whole show, which you haven't quite ruined, but very nearly did. And I deliberately did that because I think the whole show builds up to what I think is a beautiful musical gag on this theme. I probably haven't taken you with me on that, but...
You see, I wanted to talk about that the ending as well, but I can't now. Then, if you're saying it's going to
be, can you talk about it without giving everything away, or is that impossible?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, all I was going to say was again, and I mean this, and I speak as somebody who plays a bit of music. I couldn't until the backing came in. I had no idea, and all the audience are laughing, they're all like tittering. I'm thinking, what are they tittering at? I have no clue what was going on here.
See, it's a bit like you said about the goose stepping. I actually saw that coming from the first couple of notes.
Okay.
And I was surprised how many in the audience seemed to have been with it. I wanted to believe I was one of the first, but obviously wasn't. Yeah, I think I'd like to leave it there unless you feel the utter need to embellish anymore. But
no, that's all. Like I say, it was like the... It was the apogee of my
get you and your apogees.
Confusion.
It's pronounced apology. I think you'll find, Shane.
It was by that point I was gawking. Gawking at the device that I was listening to it on with complete and utter incredulous disbelief.
Right.
I felt like everyone had got on the train and left me behind on the platform. Yeah.
Well, I as I say, I think you're being harsh on yourself, but I fully understand. The thing about needing concentration. I just thought it was a celebration of his intellect. But there's one thing we've not mentioned that he didn't mention either, which is behind the whole of this show. Did you pick up on it? It's the contentious thing that dare not speak its name, beginning with B. And rhyming with X.
What, Brexit? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was virtually in every line, but I thought it was quite clever not to mention it because that would be even more divisive, and also it would date the show unnecessarily because it still stands. It is about 3,000 years of philosophy, but it's also about a massive, neurotic split down the middle of Britain and the Tory party and the Labour Party and families, foes, friends, whatever. But I thought, as I say, I thought it was good he didn't actually name it, and that we could enjoy it for what it was, which was a romp through, philosophy and science and all those things which you appear to hold dear to your heart.
I was the only one not romping. I was rompless.
Yeah, you were Rumpel of the Bailey.
I'd even got my romper suit on, and it was no good. It was
inappropriate attire, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, do you know what I'm thinking?
If I'd have watched it at the theatre, I would have been the one in the lobby going at the end of the show going, "What the bloody hell was all that about?"
Yeah, but you would have enjoyed going up to the lady with the tubs at half time.
Yes.
Mason.
Did you see the lady with the tubs?
You see, you've got to bring it back down to earth.
Back on my humour again, yeah.
I'm thinking, how can I crank it up next time I set homework for you week after next and go and pretend it's, no, I've gone to end of the pier this time and it'll be even more intellectual. I don't think I can, actually, and I wouldn't dare.
But do you know, when I've set the homework for this week, I almost want to punish you as much as you have me. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't do it deliberately. I thought, given how much you enjoyed Sarah Kendall and the Australian trilogy, which still should be on iPlayer as we speak, I thought you might go for this.
There was a lot of clever writing in that. I mean, a lot of clever storytelling in that, as I say, and I didn't feel the same. Let me just read you part of a review of Rob Newman. It's in a short paragraph, but it says it takes aim at what Newman sees as a rationalistic fallacy. In this case, the body-stroke-brain duality is proposed by the titular 17th century philosopher. On Descartes' flawed logic, he blames the centuries of human exceptionalism that followed and much of the macho sadistic melodrama that passes for science today. I mean, what? Somebody put at the bottom, so are there any gags in it or not?
I thought you were going to make a joke out of the word titular. I thought that was the funniest word in that whole review.
I tried not to snigger. and somebody in reply to that, they put, I think he's just trying to appeal to the intelligentsia and he's had a modicum of success with this because no one wants to admit that the emperor has no clothes. And that's exactly how I felt. I thought I could have written that.
You probably did, don't you?
But I
We'll out you. So the first bit you read, that was the Pucker review. Is that the Guardian by any chance?
Yeah.
How did I guess?
Old cods.
Right, okay.
I'm surprised they didn't see the Brexit connection. Maybe they did, but I just I skipped over that. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, well, I just want to quickly credit, not because you won't do it, the producer, Jon Harvey, the editors, John Whitehall, a reminder it's a hat-trick production, and the executive producer, Richard Wilson, to which you would say,
I don't believe it.
But do you believe it's a different Richard Wilson by any chance? I suppose
I tried to find out actually who he was, see if he was the exec producer, because he's produced and directed and in theatre.
Well, yeah, he's a theatre director, yeah, and he's got a Radio 4 series, but I don't know if I dare risk any more Radio 4 with you for a bit.
I've heard that. I did think about putting it on the slab because. It's a kind of spoof biography, isn't it? That he does.
It's quite interesting.
It's called Believe It, isn't it? Actually, I think.
Funnily enough, yeah, huge names in it. Anyway, so we get to the star rating, which, as usual, I haven't thought about until this very moment. So we score each out of 5 stars. Shane tries to tot it up to get a score out of 10, but usually fails to have any consistency. So I'm going to guess you're going to give it about, if not about, exactly half of what I'm inclined to give it, which is 4 stars. That's my offering. Are you going to be at the 2 end?
Yeah, I was going to give it 2. I mean, I don't think I need to say any more, do I? Really,
I think you've already disgraced yourself.
I've said too much already. I mean, like I say, Rob, if you're listening, I love you. But the vehicle just didn't work for me. I mean, that's everybody can't like everything is the phrase that always springs to mind for me. It's horses for courses, isn't it? Really. So, but yeah, it just didn't work for me, and I wouldn't go back and listen to any more of it because, like I say, I just thought it was hard work. But I'd give it a 2.
Unless, of course, you go through a period of insomnia, in which case it might be the perfect show for you.
Just the job, isn't it? Just the job. Just the job. So 6 out of 10 for... I wrote it down this week.
Oh, well done.
It's 6 out of 10 then for...
That's a pass mark, I think.
Yeah, I mean...
If it was a referendum, it would go the way of Rob Newman.
I think you cheated slightly because I think you were over generous in order to compensate for my.
No, I'd have gone for 6 out of 5 if I really wanted to do that.
Mm.
Anyway, it's time for you, headmaster, to set my homework.
Well, I'm torn because, like I say, I really want to give you some. I want to punish you.
But you always did.
And the one that I had in mind, I think actually would punish. I think it'd probably punish both of us, though. Is the bad part of it? So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for a BBC television sitcom, which I'm amazed because I'm a big fan of one of the stars of it. I only came across by accident, and in fact, I think I saw a trailer of something else I recorded and thought, I've got to grab hold of that. Now I haven't watched it yet. But I managed to make sure I caught it on transmission and recorded it. And it's a program called Quacks. Have you seen it?
No, it's about doctors or ducks?
It is about
Doctors.
Victorian era doctors. So, I mean, doctors in the infancy of surgery and doctoring and all that sort of stuff. Wow. It stars, amongst other people, Tom Basden, who I've told you about before, I think.
Yes.
I've raved about him. I think Tom Basden was involved with Plebs on ITV and Party on BBC Radio and other great. I think he's such a talented young man. He really is. And also Rory Kinnear, Roy Kinnear's son.
Yeah.
He's in it as well. Matthew Bainton, who did a thing with what's the big lad who went to America? He was played Smithy in. Smithy in what's it
sounded like my dad. When you say big lad, do you mean physically big?
Yeah, big fat chunk. What's his name? Really irritating bloke he is. He does a sports quiz program as well. You know the guy I mean. Who's you said the interweb, is it, or something, or
Peter Kay?
No, Bryn from
Uncle Bryn.
Yeah,
he talks about the YouTube. Gavin and Stacey.
Gavin and Stacey.
Oh, James Corden.
It's Corden, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
You can see why I didn't get Rob Newman stuff, can't you? Matthew Bainton was in The Wrong Mans. I don't know if you ever saw that.
The title always intrigued me, but I never got further.
Awesome.
Was it?
Really enjoyed that. Anyway, and Rupert Everett and lots of other people as well. And I say it's basically, I think it's a 6-part comedy about Victorian era doctors, and it's called Quacks. So that's your homework for next week. Shall we go with episode 1 and be traditionalists?
Oh, that's not like us at all, but yes. So Quacks, episode 1 on the Beaven team. We should mention our social meds, should we not? We are at Comedy Slab on Twitter and the Facebook. That's if your account hasn't been hacked as we speak. Yeah. Probably shouldn't joke about that. It could be my account as well. What else? Please share, do all those wonderful things that we appreciate, and a nice juicy star rating on iTunes at the upper end of the star rating would be fabulously approved of by even Shane, who doesn't approve of an awful lot, as we've gathered.
No, you give Adrian a 6, give me a 2, and say you didn't really understand what I was on about.
Can I just say, it's robnewman.com, that won't shock anyone, for Rob's website, and also details of his UK tour, which kicks off, as we speak, it's next week, probably as you hear this, later this week, on the 4th of October.
Comedy Slab is available, that's us, by the way, on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeart Radio, Spotify, YouTube, and in that compartment at the bottom left-hand side of your fridge freezer.
You did that joke the other week.
Nobody ever tells you about it. Yeah, no, nobody laughed then, so I thought, I'll try it again, give it another outing as well, just to see.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. Right. Thanks for reminding us.
Don't call us. Right. So, till next week's Comedy Slab reviews the pavement of choice next week, we'll say farewell.
Was that all right, darling? I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand a lot of what you were saying half the way through that.
What got me was when you said the whooshing sound of something went over your head, but knowing your head is so smooth, surely there would be no sound. Cut!